Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a quick voiceover um, tutorial for that seatbelt bag that I've been posting on Facebook when Wizardry Stitchery and Crafts had their retail for the webbing. I have been asked by many of you to do a quick tutorial on how I've done that, and that's what we're going to do today. It's going to be a very brief one. I'm posting here on the screen the inspo picture, and I'm going to give you the step-by-step on how to achieve this look using your favorite bucket pattern, um, one that you already have in your pattern gallery. For example, the one that I did before with the silver fairy wings and that beautiful 1.5 inch webbing from Wizardry was made using the Bonnie, but the one that I'm doing today is actually made using the Mrs. H duffel bag. This is a pattern that was part of the bag of the month club, and it's actually a backpack, but I will make it a bag like the inspiration picture. So whatever bucket bag you have works great. The Bonnie does have a front and a back, so it has two side seams, whereas the duffel bag from Mrs. H has the same accent on the bottom, but it features a back seam, not side seams. I'm actually going to put the seam on the side and it will be covered by the handle, so you won't even see any seams whatsoever from the outside. So start by cutting the pattern, whichever pattern you want from your bucket, for your bucket bag. In my case, I cut the outer part from waterproof canvas, from Autotex waterproof canvas. So now we're going to take the outer part, in my case waterproof canvas, and I'm going to place strips of double-sided tape. This is the Wizardry Stitchery and Crafts double-sided tape, the non-soluble one. I'm using 1/2 inch, but if you have just a 1/4 inch, that will work as well. And I'm spacing them randomly about 1.5 inches from each other along the outer part without the accent. Now all you have to do is take your webbing. I'm using 1.5 inch webbing just because of I like that look better, and I'm starting to lay it down and stick it to the waterproof canvas a 1/2 inch away from the bottom. This pattern follows a 3/4 inch seam allowance, so I'm adding this about 1/2 inch away from the bottom. You don't want the seatbelt webbing to be in the seam allowance. You want it to be right at where the seam allowance ends. So now you're going to go from the bottom up all the way, one strip at a time. You can play around, you can add various colors. I'm using the vertical rainbow, but you can go wild and choose your favorite seatbelt webbing. I would not use a regular webbing. I would stick to just seatbelt because it's more pliable and it's easier to sew through the weaving of the seatbelt. Make sure that you do seal your edges on both sides of the seatbelt, and when you get to the top, it's where you're going to decide how much seam allowance you will have at the top of the bag. In my case, I have about 1 inch left, so I definitely cannot add one more 1.5 inch strip, and I can't even add a 1 inch strip of webbing because then I wouldn't have any seam allowance. So I'm going to leave my seam allowance at the top at 1 inch where the fold will be. So work with whatever pattern you're using. Again, this is 1.5 inch webbing used on the Mrs. H duffel backpack, but use whatever bucket pattern you have, and your number of strips will be different based on the pattern. So now moving on to the sewing machine, what you want to do is go ahead and sew down all the strips of webbing. I am using Tex 80 in my industrial machine. This is the Wizardry Unicorn Mane that works perfectly with this fabric. And I'm starting at the bottom, sewing at about 1/8 of an inch away from from the edge of the seat belt. I like to sew as if I was top stitching, which means I'm going to be stitching with a 3.5 to 4 length, stitch length, and I'm going to go back and forth and back and forth as many times as I have webbing, seat belt webbing. So I'm doing 2 rows, one per seat belt strip, at the bottom, at the top, at the bottom, at the top, and so on and so forth. I'm trying to do them all without back stitching because these seams will be in the seam allowance of the bag, and they will be covered with the handle that I'm using. So don't stress over back stitching every single time. Just go up and down, left, right, just as I'm doing right now. And this pretty much will create your outer part, and this will be your piece for the outside. Super easy. And again, if you have a pattern that has a front and a back, so 2 side seams, you'll be doing this step 2 times instead of just once like I'm doing it. This is the general tutorial, general tips and tricks. Use whatever pattern you already have in your gallery for this style bag. You can even use a bag that's not bucket style, whatever works for you. I'm going ahead and adding the accent piece right now on the bottom. At this point, the accent vinyl is not interfaced. However, I have realized as I was sewing that the top of the bag right now is a little too stiff for the accent part on the bottom. So I went ahead and actually interfaced my vinyl with Decovil Light, and I'm also going to interface not only the bottom part, the vinyl accent at the bottom with Decovil Light, but I'm also going to interface the bottom exterior with Decovil Heavy. So I've done that on my heat press, and now I'm ready to continue sewing. Up next, we're going to add the handle. I'm using the inspiration picture for my handle for this one. The previous one that I've done before had removable strap. This one will be set in. So find the center of that long fabric that you've created, and go ahead and place double-sided tape and stitch a strap there. I chose for my body type and my personal preference a 2-yard cut of strap, which is about 72 inches. You may want it longer, you may want it shorter. Try it on if you want. It will not be adjustable. It will be just a non-adjustable crossbody. I'm making the simplest bag possible. So now that the strap is attached on one side, I'm stitching the other side, right sides together, and I'm going to try my best to keep the seam allowance open. So I'm adding 1/4 of an inch double-sided tape, the geeky tape from Wizardry, and just folding my seam allowances open as best as I can get it, because seatbelt webbing is a little tough to work with. So do your best to keep your seatbelt webbing seam allowance open. This will make sure that you don't have too much bulk. So now working from the inside of the bag, I'm adding 1/2 inch strip of double-sided tape along that seam. So that will add my second strap. Make sure that before you glue the strap on the double-sided tape, that there's no twists in the strap. You make sure that everything is nice and straight, and then go working from the inside of the bag and going very slowly because it's kind of an awkward position to sew. You're going to go ahead and stitch going from the bottom up where the strap ends, and then going back down on the other side, and that will simply sew your strap in. So look how easy that was. You have your bucket already done with the strap. So now you're going to go ahead and add the bottom of the bag, the one that has vinyl and its interface with Decovil Heavy. Find the 1/4 point of both the bottom of the bag and the opening, the circle oval-ish opening, and then you're going to pin in place matching the quarter points and using lots and lots of pins around the oval bottom of the bag. The Bonnie features the similar bag bottom, so the technique will pretty much be the same. So what you will want to do right now is stitch that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and having the Decoville heavy smaller and outside of the seam allowance will help keep all these fabrics together. See if you prefer to sew from the inside or from the outside, whatever you're comfortable with your machine. So I like to stitch with my bag on the bed of the machine, not the bottom of the bag, but either way would be fine. Just go slow, make sure there's no puckers along the way, and stitch all around. You do want to remove the excess seam allowance right now because it will create unnecessary puckers there in bulk, so you want to remove that and set aside your main bag for now. Turn it, admire it, but put it aside for now because you want to start working on the lining piece right now. Just look how pretty that is. I absolutely love the way that rainbow seat belt looks, and it's a non-inspired bag for excellent day-to-day wear. So now grab your lining piece. Like I said before, I do not add any pockets on this one. It's the simplest bag possible, so no pockets. I'm just sewing the side seams, well, this back seam that will become a side seam in my case, finding the quarter points at the bottom, finding the quarter points for the lining piece, and sewing it just like we did for the outer part. The lining that I'm using is waterproof canvas, so there is no interfacing needed for it. It's stiff enough for lining, and as you can see, this bag does have minimal interfacing, at least in my case, because I'm using waterproof canvas. Remove the seam allowance from the lining as well. So now what I will do for this bag, because I find it to be the easiest method possible, I will do a drop-in lining instead of sewing and turning. It's hard to turn with all that seat belt because it makes the main fabric very stiff. So I just do a drop-in lining. I'm adding um, I'm adding double-sided tape 1/2 inch along the top edge, and then I'm marking a 2-inch line from the top that will show me where to fold for 1-inch hem allowance. Remember, on the main I said I will do a hem allowance at the top of 1 inch because that's where my seat belt stopped. If yours stops 1/2 inch away from the top, then you can definitely do a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top. Because mine stopped at 1 inch, that's what I'm going to use. So I fold it towards the wrong side on both the lining, and now I'm folding on the main towards the wrong side, and that using that double-sided tape makes a world of difference because it will just stick to itself so well. So now I'm simply grabbing the lining that I worked on, dropping it inside. See how easy that is? Super, super easy. We're dropping it inside, pinning it in place. It's nice and fitted in there once pinned in place. And now we're just going to top stitch. See, there was no turning whatsoever. My hands are not in pain. My soul is not hurt from leaving an opening, turning, and top stitching. Now we're just dropping in this lining. I don't have any pockets, so there's no pockets needed for this method. Is by far the simplest method to finish a bag with this kind of a drop-in lining. So we're going to top stitch right now, going over the part where the handle are very, very easily because there's a little bulk there. Make sure that the handles are not turned. Trim your threads, and you're absolutely done with the stitching part. All you have left right now is add the closure based on your preferred method. In my case, I am adding grommets, but if you want to add like a magnetic enclosure there, you could do that. You can even leave it like that, just the way it is, open. But I do want to add grommets like I did for the other one, just to be as close as possible to my inspiration picture. So for that, I'm marking 3/4 of an inch away from the side where the handles are, on both sides, and then using my spacing tool that I use for buttons and snaps, I'm marking uh, placement, 6 points for the grommets on each side. So total you'll have 12 grommets, again spaced 3/4 of an inch from each side, and then using my equal spacer that I got on Amazon, I just put the 6 points on both sides, so total 12. I'm using a cam snap press to put the holes for the grommets. I do have a die that's exactly the size of these large grommets that I'm using. The grommets are from Amazon. They came with a press, the green one. The pink one is from Cam. I'll link it down below, of course. And then we go to town. We put a hole, and then we put a grommet, then we put another hole, then we put another grommet. And I'm going to be doing this beautiful beautiful workout for 12 times. So I do seal in the fabric as I go. And there you have it. I have put all 12 grommets, and I've also added offline, I've created a little hook um, for the drawstring, just by folding a 5-inch piece of seatbelt webbing. It's about a 5-inch piece that I just folded like a bow and stitched down the middle. Nothing very complicated. So now, starting from the back of the bag, in my case it looks the same, but if you have a front and a back, starting from the front and a back of the bag, thread your webbing so it goes in and out, in and out, and there you have it. Pull your ends through that stopper that you've made, through the pulling thing, and you are all set. Now you can make any adjustment you want to the length of the seatbelt webbing. For the drawstring, I am using 1-inch webbing. You can finish the webbing with just a lighter, or you can add strap ends, whatever you would like and whatever works for you. You can obviously cut them shorter if you want, but you are pretty much done. I hope you enjoyed this brief, quick voiceover tutorial for this bucket bag made with seatbelt webbing, and I can't wait to see if you create one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.